Hey, John Gilroy here. Regular listeners know that CISA recommends ICAM. Today, let's unpack those acronyms. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. Our guest in the virtual studio today is Mike Colson, Director of Public Sector Growth at a company called Akamai, A-K-A-M-A-I. Mike, these acronyms aren't confusing to you, but some people may have heard them a couple times, some haven't. So maybe let's start off this discussion with unpacking some of these magic acronyms. And so we all know what they are, but just to get what they call the gamers level set. Is that what the gamers call it, a level set?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great. So ICAM is Identity and Credential Access Management, right? Yeah. It's one of the keystones to how everything gets held together. But what if I told you that the way we've been thinking about Zero Trust is actually just creating security silos, right? So we think about these pillars within the CISA model, and really those pillars are inadvertently creating these tech silos within organizations and agencies. So I think today, like what we really are trying to drive to, and then hopefully it gets across to the listeners in this conversation, is how we're flipping the script and moving away from a pillar-based architecture for Zero Trust to a more, if we have to use the architectural metaphors, to more of an arch, and how we leverage ICAM as the keystone with how identity binds as the central force for security architectures for Zero Trust.
Well, I think you use the word pillar, and that's what you see in the federal government. All the pillars, they start with identity. And so It seems like and I never thought of that. This segmentation can cause different silos and maybe restrict some applications there. There's a phrase that I've heard out there, it fits in this conversation. It's called least permissive trust, I've heard about access-based and role-based, but least permissive trust. So where does that fit in this conversation anyway?
Yeah, so least permissive trust, it's something that I and the team at Akamai have been trying to get better understanding of for the government and for our commercial customers as well. The construct comes from this idea that within traditional Zero Trust identities, it's verification as a one-time checkpoint, right? We say, oh, well, we have to have Zero Trust. But the reality is there's always a layer of trust that has to occur in order for access to actually function as it should. So rather than thinking of it as a one-time checkpoint, there needs to be kind of three critical components. We end up with situations where there's over provisioning within like this one-time checkpoint and users get more access than they need. Or there's a stale credential system where access persists even after roles change. Or there's a static trust where once authentication is done, trust is assumed for the entire session. Where least permissive comes in is it says, let's kind of break that paradigm. Let's use user behavior and device health and contextual factors to determine whether or not permission should be granted for that end user. And that's the way that Akamai thinks about this in terms of how we present that identity portion and provide policy governance as an overlay.
I did some research this morning, so I went to the Akamai, A-K-A-M-A website, and I found this white paper, and you like this title, Least Permissive Trust, What Zero Trust Wishes It Could Be.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah,
I think you get some Zero Trust vendors out there going, "Hey, Mike, what's you picking on me?" But maybe that's the goal. Maybe it's this amorphous concept, and maybe it's boiled down to those least. It's got to have some flexibility, but it's really a difficulty there. I mean, a guy once told me that if you're in a car race and you go 168 miles an hour, you lose 169 and you turn over. And so where's that little razor's edge there? It's hard to implement.
It is hard to implement. Absolutely. And so it's not just the challenge of, whether or not the architectural guidance for Zero Trust puts you into a series of silos, but also like, how are you thinking about the longevity and full paradigm of advanced access controls that you're going to apply. Because again, right, we think of identity and that access control piece as the keystone to that archway that's holding all the rest of the zero trust silos like data and network, et cetera, together. Then you have to start thinking about how that keystone can actually support the weight, right, and maintain the architectural shape. And so you have to get into, all right, well, when we're doing the behavior-based analysis, are we looking for anomalous action triggers for permission changes so that there's an ever ongoing real-time analysis of the context-aware factors that happen when a user requests access to something. It has to be truly at the attribute level, but backwards compatible so that it can support systems that aren't able to function within a real ABAC environment. And so at Akamai, we support those type of workloads across the DoD and U.S. federal government, and to the tune of things that are even going so far back to, hey, the only authentication methodology that an application supports is cookie-based auth. Well, that's fine if we provide the right policy governance on top of that. We can get to contextual factors like what the location of that user is, what the network they're coming in looks like, what time of day is the user requesting access, is any of that anomalous, and then what device are they looking at, like coming in from? Is that device healthy? Is it compromised? Should we think about it in a restricted access manner? Do we then apply different policy rule sets based off of the device health that would provide a lower level of access than if they were coming in with a healthy device? And so all of these things, right, need to be managed and constantly observed and adjusted. And that's where, Akamai, I believe, has a leg up, because we operate as this managed service offering for our customers, and we have that staffed knock and sock operations. We're providing the capabilities, and we're doing it at some of the highest security classifications and levels within the U.S. government.
So, we began this conversation with silly things about acronyms, and you just dropped one in there kind of trippingly in the tongue, ABAC. And the network nerds who are listening, and you know who you are. We always studied RBAC and ABAC and all that stuff. So what you're saying is that, this is not your father's ABAC. I mean, it's like, oh, ABAC's great, but there's more to it than just that. I think that's more of an amplified version of access-based control. Is that, or is that completely off base here?
No, I mean, so what ABAC is attribute-based access control, right? And so we're looking at the series of attributes that are associated with users and objects and how they access or request access to other systems and to data. And so from that, we're able, and we do this across I guess the other important factor here is, right, when we think about this, is there is, just like we've talked about in every other technology that's ever existed, there's a sprawl that occurs. And so within identity, there's been a sprawl. There's so many identity providers out there that are being utilized by agencies and companies that are in pockets and silos, whether you're using Active Directory or Entra or Okta or Ping or whomever, right? Like there's all of these other identity providers out there. And some agencies have hundreds, if not thousands of them. So how do you consolidate and ensure that the governance and policy is being applied ubiquitously across your entire ecosystem? Well, you have to be able to understand and map those baselines and understand that the attributes that are formed by the user, you, John, sitting in Virginia with, a podcast access is different than you having access to, if you were working on the weekend as a beer taster at one of the local brew gardens. And so you'd know which of those networks did you access from. Was it your home network? Was it your beer garden access? What time of day was it? What access controls do you need for one role versus the other role? And you get to spell out like, okay, what is the job function? What is the assignment of this individual, and what is the assignment of that individual at this time? And you're able to start breaking it down. And where attribute-based access control is very granular, when you apply a policy capability like Akamai, you actually get to a really interesting mix of ABAC, RBAC, role-based attribute access control, and it really drives to a context-based access control. We don't need to get into CBAC today, but that's really saying, who, where, what, and how you're accessing so that we can ensure that a user is getting access to only what they need when they need it. And so that allows for, the same user getting different permissions based on whether they're on a managed device or in the office versus a personal device on public Wi-Fi.
When I've studied Zero Trust, as we mentioned, starts off with identity. So Mike Colson comes in, show me your ID. Okay, you're allowed in, so you're in. And so what you're saying is that some of these identity providing organizations may be great at making sure Mike Colson's Mike Colson. It's not the Mike Colson in Nebraska, not the Mike Colson in Mexico. It's the right Mike Colson from Maryland. But so what? I mean, what you're saying is that, well, that's a baby step. That's not running the marathon. That's the what do they call it? Table stakes. There are people who play poker to call it table. So that's the table stakes. What you're saying is that, great, now we have to worry about these static controls and stale controls and over provisioning. But I think people they're doing the two-card Monte, not poker, but they're, look right over here. Okay, Mike Colson's Mike Colson. Next, John Gilbert. Wait. What about Mike? Where's he at? Oh, well, we're working the next one. So it seems it's trickier play than you would think.
It is, but I think we're seeing examples where, just look at the news, where making sure that just in time and just enough access capabilities are becoming critical path, especially to some of our most sensitive data, like making sure that temporary access is only good for specific durations. Making sure that permissions automatically revoke when a task is completed. Being able to revoke certificates when a user rolls off of a certain project or is, outside of a certain area, and then preventing privilege creep and unauthorized access. Like, there's plenty of stories, right, where because of a stale or over-provisioned user, access was gained. And so this is how we think is like, all right, what is the worst case scenario? How do we drive that so that it's continuous in the way that we monitor and provide that authentication and escalation?
Well, I do my identity control by going to LinkedIn and looking at people's profiles. So I went to your profile and I follow you, and you highlighted this article. It's a pretty good article. This is CISA recommends segmentation in Zero Trust to combat interlock ransomware. I mean, hey, that's a hook, isn't it? I mean, we were talking about the theory is Zero Trust and the theory is and we can go to those details you want, but this is stuff that ransomware is a thing and it's increasing every year and it's bad news. And so this is a blog at your site, Akamai, with a guy named Jacob Abrams. Pretty nice summary. I think if I were Govey, I would want to read this, huh?
Yeah, I mean, the ability that's talked about there, beyond just the ransomware, is that the capability allows for not just north-south, but also east-west firewall control and segmentation. And so coupled with the ability to do the least permissive access control, now you really have the capability to not just monitor and manage, but also enforce and really kind of stop that those types of ransomware or escape attacks that happen once somebody's inside your system.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link to this in show notes because it's almost like a call a primer of just, okay, here's the basics, and here's what CISA says, and here's MFA, and another quote from, and this is like, in academia, you have to have, your footnotes and your sources, and every word's got to be perfect. It's got to have a certain format, but this is almost like an academic format. It says, CISA recommends MFA. There's the quote. Bang. Next. What about Vonnegut? Bang. What? It's like maybe this guy came from an academic background, but that's how academics would do it. They'd say, Columbus is the capital of Ohio, and then reference a map or something, And so it's the how here. So Zero Trust maybe okay. We identity real good, but how exactly you do it? It's difficult. And Akamai's in a strange position. I don't know if people know, but you guys have been around for a couple of decades. I mean, I'll tell you, he's the guy in the corner who's been beat up and knocked around and seen every left hook and every knife, and it's been a lot of fights. You've seen so many things. And so this allows you to put things in context, maybe better than a company that's only been around for 10 years. I mean, the depth of your fighting experience is pretty much all over the world, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, not to brag, right? But Akamai is the largest content delivery network provider globally. And so we have this security footprint that enables us to be able to protect our customers at the furthest edge.
Yeah.
All right. So keep the security risk away from the crown jewels of the most critical systems, and ensure that we're able to meet this again in a continuously monitored, continuously managed fashion.
Yeah, one of the guys I follow is Dave Linthicum, and he brought this topic up. And this guy's written hundreds of articles. He's well known. He knows everything. And he said, he's seen this little sea change here where, coming back to protecting the old data. It's like, oh, okay, maybe time to focus in on that. And so that seems to be, but I'm just thinking that the unique background that you folks have is that, let's put it in context. Well, my context here is Virginia. And you say, no, how about how about the world? I mean, so the different threats in different areas of the world. And I think that when you say, well, maybe we can do context better than the next guy. Why? Well, I have these sensors all over the world that can see what's going on. And I don't think the malicious actors are limited to any state or country, are they?
No, they're absolutely not. And we certainly see a lot. And, we have all sorts of data that demonstrates the global impact as we see these threats come in, and then how we stop them at the edge. And that's, aside from just the blog that you referenced for folks to go to, I would recommend reaching out to us at Akamai and letting us bring you into our NOC center, and we can show you. We have great visuals, right, that are up on the screen that are able to demonstrate the real-time attacks, how we're actually thwarting them. So if you're out there and you're interested as a listener, feel free.
Yeah, it looks like a Jason Bourne movie or something. It's, whoa, what's this? Oh, look, hey, what is this? No. This is
it's impressive. Yeah. I just, John, for what it's worth, I want to make sure that we're hammering home, because I think the storyline here is what's important to understand about how least permissive and how Akamai identity works. And so if we used a small vignette, we'll use a hypothetical here. So there's a guy named John. He's a Department of War contractor who needs to access sensitive applications. Monday morning, he logs in from his managed laptop at home. The ICAM system sees it's a known device, familiar network, standard work hours, typical behavior. He gets access to the application he needs. Tuesday, he's working from a coffee shop, right? Same credentials, same person, but now he's on a public Wi-Fi. The ICAM system instantly recalculates. It's an untrusted network, different location. His access is automatically restricted, but he can still work, just not to the sensitive operations that require additional authentication challenges. So this isn't just security theater, right? It's intelligent, adaptive protection that the same person gets different levels of trust based on real-time risk assessments. And the ICAM is a keystone in supporting that entire security architecture. That's what we talk about when we talk about least permissive, right? That's how Akamai is operating in this space.
Yeah, context aware, and that's why I talked about context.
Exactly.
Well, this is an audio interview, and if people saw this as a video, you'd find out that I'm an old guy, you're a young guy. And in the federal government, there are some old systems, legacy systems. And so, talk to me about us old guys, legacy systems, and some of them are pretty old. And so how do you interact with legacy systems to introduce the type of more modern technology?
It's provided as an overlay. That's the beauty of this. So I think I mentioned earlier that there are systems that are operating today under an Akamai least permissive trust umbrella. And so the way that we actually do this is that system previously would cache a cookie on the client side for a user, right? So user would come in, they would hit a website, accept the cookie, trusted device, wherever access was allowed through whatever firewalls, and they'd say, okay, great, now I can access this application. That application wouldn't work off network unless they had a VPN or some other security paradigm, or a hole was punched in the firewall, which would be the worst case scenario, and then they're able to access it probably by IP address, which is the way we used to do it. But the way that we operate is we're actually able to obfuscate those pieces by providing that zero trust endpoint, right, their least permissive endpoint in the edge. When the user comes in and accesses, what they get is a session token, right, that is passed through our system, continuously authorized per request. And then that actually interfaces with the application to say, okay, we're going to hold the cookie session and we're going to run our ABAC at the edge to validate that this user and all of the contextual process that is needed are where they have to be to provide access to the application. And we're able to then granularly apply that into the backend stack. And so it's able to work backwards compatible. Again, it's able to work across various IDPs, pulling that identity and then applying the appropriate policy based off of the context that is collected.
Let's go back to John, the contractor working out of my house. Got him on his laptop. I'm all happy. Then I go up to the local coffee shop, and then, whoa, what's going on here? My machine's slowing down. Well, hey, what? When humans get constraints, they tend to complain. So how do you deal with these cotton-picking humans? I mean, I would think that's what a human's going to do. Hey, it worked at home. I don't know what's going on.
So it's not a slowdown. It's not a performance hit. What they see is a lower level of authorization without additional credential challenges. And so, because it's continuous and contextually aware, like it's all based off of the app owner and the policy, right? So how would they like that situation to be handled? And we're able to turn some knobs on the back end to be able to ensure different levels of access. Again, non-performance hit, but it is authentication driven for the way that the access is done. And sometimes that's just, education to the user. Like, you know where you're operating from, so you know that that's not going to be a secure environment. And there's ways to banner and notify the user of restricted access based off of untrusted network or, insecure device.
I do a lot of interviews with cloud folks, and I know some people here and there. And the big pitch was, hey, easy to scale. Wow. So what about your system? I mean, it seems this is so thorough that it may not be easy to scale. So how does scaling work in the system? Is that just John Gilroy? It's 10,000 John Gilroys from the Wi-Fi or something. I mean, how do you guys scale?
So because we're operating already at a global scale, we kind of scale invisibly to agencies and users. The access control points are globally distributed. The interface with the backend systems through thousands of different networks that are constantly looking from an algorithmic perspective to find the least cost path and fastest support. And we've kind of solved that. I mean, that's the whole founding of Akamai was around this construct of how do we make the internet faster and how do we scale it for everyone. So that's kind of in our DNA. That's how we think about operationally everything. This highly distributed, logical mesh, ubiquitous environment that is able to be resilient and reliable and provide flexibility for the end user. So yeah, scaling. I'm not saying that there's not an upper limit, but I haven't seen the upper limit yet.
Let's go from the upper limit to the lower limit.
Sure.
Let's talk about data. And what I have seen is I've seen on-prem systems, I've seen public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, I don't know what kind of cloud, all kinds of things. It would just seem that there's a degree of complexity that's introduced in that type of environment for different levels of data and accessing to different levels of data that I personally wouldn't want to walk into a room and say, okay, John, here's Michael. It's a complex environment here. This is especially at the DoD. I mean, there's different varying levels of information there. And so how can that be done without frustration?
Yeah. So within those environments, the way that we operate is we apply the policy within the granular application layer, right? And so like, as you're thinking about the complexity of the environment, and I also want to preface, right? Like Akamai is not the only player, and we're not the whole solution. We're providing an overlay governance capability within Least Permissive that solves some of the big challenges, right? For what is getting after with Zeer Trust, but we play well with the IPAs and the others within this space, but where I think we help solve some of the complexity is because we're able to work across all of the various application stacks, vendors. We operate both on-prem, in cloud, across hybrid clouds. We enable the federation so that you don't have to build, your SSOs across single sign-on solutions across all of them, your identity solutions across all of them. We're able to bridge some of those gaps. We're able to support and make easier for the customer and application owners how they create their access control plans and how they apply those more granular ABAC policies, and in a way that is very much behind the scenes and in a lot of cases more performant than they were experiencing prior to bringing us in.
Well, 35 minutes. I think we covered Least Permissive Trust fairly well. I have a better idea. And if you're listening, it's 2 for 1 day. I'll listen to both articles on the show notes page so you can refer to them and maybe get a hold of Mike or at the next trade show, walk up to the booth and talk to him, because this is a solution for a lot of complex problems. And I think the term Zero Trust is bandied about there, but it has to be applied in a very precise manner, especially at the DoD. And unfortunately, Big Mike, we're running out of time here. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Mike Colson, Director of Public Sector Growth at Akamai.